Good afternoon. So nice to see such a big crowd. Should be a very interesting program. Unfortunately, the first trick they're going to do is make me disappear. But, sorry, I won't say the whole thing, but I'm very happy to see you all here for this month's edition of Bites and Bits of History, which is sponsored in part by the John and Loretta Hines Foundation. Some new faces here. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Bill Lawson. I'm Executive Director of Mahoning Valley Historical Society, and we operate the Tyler History Center, which we're at today, and also the Ernest Stanley Museum on Wick Avenue, and a new big building at 250 East Federal Street, which is still in the works. But we're here today to talk about magic in the Mahoning Valley, but before we do that, I have a little bit of PSA and keeping to do for Mahoning Valley Historical Society. Excuse me. Some upcoming events you might be interested in would include an exclusive screening of a preview trailer of about 45 minutes long of the Ken Burns' new documentary, The American Revolution. If you're a regular on PBS, there's been specials already up for that, which is coming up later in November, thank you, yes. But we are partnering with PBS channels 45 and 49 to do a preview here, which will also include a panel discussion afterward. So that starts on Thursday, October 30th at 6 p.m. in this room. So if you're available on Thursday, October 30th, and you want to take part in this special program, it's free, but because of demand, you need to make a reservation for a ticket. We can only take so many people in the room, and each table has a flyer about it and more information on how you can sign up for a ticket for the event on Ken Burns' documentary, Thursday, October 30th, which is just 2 weeks from today. Something else that's big this time of year for us is Memories of Christmas Past at the Arms Family Museum. And work is well underway, nearing completion for this year's version of Memories of Christmas Past. And just so you know, it opens to the public on Saturday, November 15th, for our regular hours, which are noon to 4, and it will run through New Year's Eve on December 31st. If you are a member, you probably have received an invitation for the member preview, which is taking place on Friday, November 14th. And you can see Linda Costa over at the table for more information about that. But that has become so popular with our members. We're actually going to do 3 sessions this year, including a brunch in the late morning and an afternoon and an early evening session. So, but as usual, spaces are limited. So if you have your invitation, please make reservations and see Linda if you'd like today. Looking ahead to next month for Bites and Bits of History, on Thursday, November 20th, we'll be back in this room for the Shenango Valley Civil War story and its ties to the Mahoning Valley. And this should be an interesting program presented by Taylor Galaska, who's a very energetic young man who's president of the Sharon Historical Society over in Mercer County. And he will be here on Thursday, November 20th at noon, and hope you can attend it. Open now in this building in the Youngstown Foundation Community History Gallery This is Youngstown, the Hispanic people of the city. And this is a photography exhibit that was put together by local artist and photographer Tony Nicholas. And it's wonderful portraits of people from the Hispanic Latino community and also brief bio sketches on them. And so that's available here in the Community History Gallery and will run through the end of the year. So let's get down to business today. And as I mentioned, the topic is Magic in the Mahoning Valley, a Century of Mysteries. And our speakers today are Gary Morton and Fritz Coombs. Now, Fritz Coombs is no stranger to our programs here at MVHS. He's currently a member of the board of directors, and he is a frequent attender of Bites and Bits of History. He has presented in the past for Bites and Bits, going back 6 years, with fellow scouter Bill Moss about the history and centennial of Camp Stambaugh. Today, he will talk about the history of magic in the Mahoning Valley, and just a little bit of information on Fritz. He's a retired lawyer and has been involved with performing magic for the better part of 60 years. He is a life member of the Youngstown Magic Club and has been awarded the Order of Merlin Excalibur by the International Brotherhood of Magicians. Those of you who have seen the Boar's Head Festival at St. John's Episcopal Church, usually on Epiphany Sunday, Fritz for many years has been the magician as part of that, and he's just really part of the whole program at this point. And so along with that, he also, might have seen him recently during St. Patrick's Day as Seamus O'Fool, the magic leprechaun. He does his comedy magic for various private parties, civic groups, and scout troops. And joining him is Gary Morton, who has been entertaining audiences with magic and illusion as a professional magician for over 25 years. Gary has performed across the country doing banquets, trade shows, and private parties. He specializes in classic magical effects which contain a high degree of comical entertainment with interactive audience participation. This is letting you know what's going to happen. Gary also has studied acting in Los Angeles, California, and has appeared in such shows as Cheers, Night Court, and Beverly Hills Cop 2, just to name a few. He is an active member and officer of Ring 2, the International Brotherhood of Magicians, And Gary has also been a 5-time candidate for Parlor Magician of the Year at the world-famous Magic Castle in Hollywood. And so I'm very pleased to present Fritz Coombs and Gary Morrison.
We're really pleased that the Historical Society has invited us to come and share our passion for the love of magic and the history of magic. We have a nice presentation for you, but I thought beforehand, I'm going to kind of break the rules of what a magician would do. We as a magician, we get asked a lot, well, we get asked a few questions. The number one question we always get asked, number one, by far, can you make my wife disappear? That's the number one. We hate that. But Bob, if you're still here, the answer is yes. It just costs a little bit more. But the number two question is, how did you do that? I heard somebody ask that. How did you do that? We as magicians, we are not allowed to tell how we do our magic effects. But I am going to I'll present one magic effect for you, then I'm going to teach it to you. That way you will know some magic. You won't have to ask any other magician how he does it. So, little thing, all you need to do magic, all you have to have is a little pocket handkerchief. That's all you need is a little pocket handkerchief, just like this. What you do is you come out in front of your audience, you wave the handkerchief up and down, and you place it in your closed fist, just like that. Now, that's not the magical part. The magical part is that it goes in white, but it comes out red. That's the magical part. All right? So if you tuck a little bit more white in, you get a little bit more red out. A little bit more white, a little bit more red. The more white you tuck in, the more red you get out. And once you got that white one pushed all the way down in your hand, that's when you pull out the red one and you've got magic. I said I would teach you this though, right? As if you want to know. You want to know how it's done. Yes? Okay, here's the secret. I use 2 handkerchiefs. Yeah, that's how it's done. So go home and practice now. No. I'm going to tell you a little bit more. What I don't tell most people is I have the red handkerchief here that's hidden in my hand right there. That's where I keep the white one, hidden in the hand, just like that. So that's the secret, 2 handkerchiefs. See? What you don't tell anybody is, well, you were coming in and I was setting up. I secretly hid the red one in my closed fist. It was there the whole time. I don't know if you saw it when I came out. Get it all the way down in your hand, just like that. Don't let it poke out the bottom of it. Once you get the red one hidden, that's when you come out and you start waving the white one up and down. You say, I'm going to do magic with a white handkerchief. Of course, the only problem you have is now you can't open this hand. Because if you open this hand, it ruins the illusion. If you keep this hand closed, wave the white one up and down, and what I showed you before, you place the white one in your closed fist, just like this. Goes in white, but it comes out red, because remember, I just hid that one there. So if you put more white in, you put more red out. More white in, more red. Oh, here's another tip. Don't do this. They'll know you're using 2 handkerchiefs, okay? Keep the red one up into your hand until you get the white one hidden. Then once you've got that white one hidden, that's when you pull out the red one and it's magic. If anybody asks about the white one, blow on it and everything's fine. So, now you can ask Thank you. All right. Fritz and I have broken this little talk down into 2 parts. I'm going to introduce about how magic was born and bred here right in Ohio. Then we'll focus down a little bit on the Mahoning Valley, and then Fritz is going to talk about our history, the 100-year history that we have coming up next year of the Youngstown Magic Club itself. So to start with, the first magician we're going to talk about, and I said right away we're talking about Ohio first. Well, Harry Keller wasn't from Ohio. He was from Erie, Pennsylvania, just across the border there. But Harry was born July 11th, 1849 in Erie, Pennsylvania. Keller was the first great magician native to the United States. He was called the Dean of Magic and the most beloved magician in history. Keller opened his full evening show in the United States in 1884. He was known as a perfectionist, as he carefully planned every word and maneuver of his act. There we go. One of his most memorable stage illusions was the levitation of a girl advertised as the levitation of Princess Karnak. He was the most popular magician from 1896 until 1908. In 1908, Keller publicly turned his show over to his successor, Howard Thurston. Howard Thurston was from Ohio. He was born in Columbus, July 20th, 1869. Thurston was originally a card manipulator and toured the world from 1904 to 1907 with a full evening show. In 1907, he returned to the United States and became successor to Harry Keller, the leading American magician. He graduated from card tricks to perfecting grand illusions, and for more than 20 years he toured with a 3-hour show and became best known for his large stage illusions such as the Floating Lady. At his peak, Thurston traveled with 30 assistants and 8 train cars full of props, costumes, animals, and machinery. This one right here, one poster depicts the whippet that he would make disappear from the stage. And we looked that up at the Magic Club meeting just last week and found that the whippet was actually an automobile that was produced in Toledo, Ohio, so more of the Ohio connection there. Thurston was a contemporary and a rival of Harry Houdini. Thurston was hailed as the world's greatest magician in the early 20th century. Thurston's best skill, however, was his showmanship. Next was Carl Germain. Carl was born and raised in Cleveland and began performing magic as a teenager. Initially, he performed in local, small-time vaudeville, but by the time he was 18, he began working the Chautauqua and Lyceum circus. He performed as Germain the Wizard. Germain performed many classic popular magic effects of his day, but what made his performance different from others were his artistic and elegant presentations of these tricks. Germain was known for his trick of magically growing flowers. He was also one of the early presenters of mind-reading effects in his show, which he performed with his sister, Ida. I'll get this over. There we go. Okay. In 1910, when his sister died, he went to law school and hung out his shingle as a probate lawyer. Not satisfied with his law career, however, he rapidly succumbed to the magic bug and embarked on tours again. His last tour being in 1916. Germain's career was ended by a brain tumor, which took away his eyesight. His last 4 decades were spent in sightless retirement, although he occasionally lectured on magic. Maurice Francis Raymond, or Francois Raymond, was born in 1877, died in 1948. He was from Akron, Ohio, and toured the world as the Great Raymond. He began performing as a young man in the United States, but achieved his first success in England. In 1910, he made a tour of Australia. Spending considerable time in the Raymond achieved similar conquests in South America. He purportedly performed his show in as many as 7 languages, and clearly had excellent command of Spanish and French. One act that Raymond was known for was his metempsychosis, the fastest trunk escape in the world, which he performed with his wife, Deep Scott. Raymond was known for much of his promotional material where, unlike most magicians, if you've ever noticed their posters, Raymond is smiling in his. Everybody else was so serious. This is an example of one of the throw-out cards here that they would toss out into the audience as advertisements, and they're very highly collectible items right now. A more current fellow, Joshua J. Josh is from Canton, Ohio. He's a magician, author, and lecturer. At only 17 years old, Josh authored his first book, The Magic Atlas, containing over 50 magical effects. Since that time, he's appeared on stage in over 100 countries and has performed magic on numerous television shows, including appearances on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon and The Late Late Show with James Corden. Josh is also the author of several other books, including the best-selling Magic, the Complete Course, and How Magicians Think. He has designed illusions for stage and screen, including HBO's Game of Thrones. Joshua consulted with the United States Postal Service on the design of their postage stamp series, The Art of Magic. He fooled Penn and Teller on the hit show Fool Us, and he holds a Guinness World Record for card tricks. Josh is co-owner of Vanishing Ink Magic, one of the world's largest and finest online magic brands. Now we're going to focus in just a little bit more tightly onto the Mahoning Valley and take a look at a few of the notable magicians from the valley. Number one here, Charles Joseph Carter, who began his career as a journalist and lawyer, was an American stage magician who performed as Carter the Great. Carter was born 1874 in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Due to stiff competition from the number of magic acts on the American stages at the time, Carter opted to pursue his career abroad, where he achieved his greatest fame. In 1907, he set off on a world tour that took him and his family to Australia, New Zealand, India, China, Sri Lanka, Egypt, Italy, and beyond for 3 years. He would continue to tour the world with only short respites in the United States until 1917, completing 7 world tours in his time. Because of his elaborate live shows, he had to travel everywhere with a lot of equipment, which at one point reached the weight of 31 tons. According to some sources, it was this heavy equipment of his that led him to being refused a place on the RMS Titanic during a return trip. Fortunately for him, I guess. In 1920, the great Carter was touring again, opening in Sydney, Australia. In 1921, he lost a fortune while filming The Lion's Bride in South Africa, a movie starring himself he had written, produced, and directed. That film never made it to the screen. The great Carter returned to touring, playing packed houses in Australia in 1924 and again in 1934. In 1936, Charles Carter suffered a heart attack on his way to Bombay, India, and died 1936 at age 61. Among the highlights of Carter's stage performances were the classic Sawing a Woman in Half illusion, Making an Elephant Disappear, and Cheating the Gallows, where a shrouded Carter would vanish just as he dropped at the end of a hangman's noose. One other thing I want to mention. A little novel that was written here by a fellow by the name of Glenn David Gold called Carter Beats the Devil. It's a fictitious story, but it's Carter's the main character and centered around the death of Warren G. Harding in San Francisco. But when I was listening to this on audio tape when I first heard it, and it kind of struck me funny that even though the whole thing was staged in San Francisco, there's a part in there where he picks up his girlfriend and he takes her to Idora Park. It's a very good read, though. Anna Eva Fay was born Anna Eliza Heathman in Southington, Ohio, 1851. Anna was one of the most famous and successful mediums of the 19th and 20th centuries, enthralling the American public with her ability to read minds, communicate with spirits, and predict future events. She was particularly renowned for her somnolency, where she would predict and answer the written questions of audience members with startling accuracy. And throughout her life, she received thousands of letters entreating her guidance. She became famous for her vaudeville and stage performances in the 1880s and 1890s, where she was billed as the indescribable phenomenon. In a series of experiments in London in 1875, Anna managed to fool noted chemist and physicist William Crookes into believing that she had genuine psychic powers. Anna used magic tricks to accomplish her mediumship feats, and in 1913 she confessed that she had duped Crookes and other scientists. She was investigated by magician Harry Houdini, who she was very personal friends with. And after her retirement in 1924, she confessed fraud and revealed the tricks that she had used to dupe the people. Another local magician, Dr. John Booth, born 1912 in Meadville, Pennsylvania. In 1928, at the age of 16, Booth joined the International Brotherhood of Magicians and began publishing a serial column on magic history called Memoirs of a Magician's Ghost. and it appeared in their monthly publication. Around 1934, Booth began to write his first two books, Forging Ahead in Magic and Marvels of Mystery, which later became classic reference works for magicians. Booth was noted to be an experienced nightclub magician who performed at premier hotels and venues, but his enduring contributions to magic were as a magic historian, as he documented magic performances through his own travels and experiences around the world. He was purported to be one of the first to create documentaries for the presentation and lectures on magic. Later, Booth stopped doing show performances. In 1942, left to become an ordained minister. He spent over 30 years as a minister in a Universalist Unitarian church. And Fritz found out that he actually pastored church here in Munster. In 1986, Booth published the book Psychic Paradoxes. The book debunked the tricks of fraudulent mediums and psychics and was published by Prometheus Books. He's also known for having the longest-running membership in the International Brotherhood of Magicians of over 81 years. Orlando Carmelo Scarnecchia. He was born in 1903 in Niles, Ohio, and at some point anglicized his name to be John Scarney. I think we're all thankful for that. He left school after the 8th grade, learned from a local card sharp how to perform such swindles as the three-card Monte, and how to cheat in gambling card games by manipulating the cards. Scarney began practicing sleight of hand with the goal of becoming a card sharp, but his Roman Catholic mother dissuaded her son from gambling in general and cheating others in particular. She persuaded him to practice magic instead. Gradually, Scarney became an expert at not only magic effects, but games of all kinds as well. Articles were written about him in various magazines, and he was hired as a consultant or advisor by various companies, as well as the U.S. Army, which sent him to bases around the world in order to educate soldiers about the dangers of card and dice cheats. He wrote 15 books and co-wrote a few more for a total of 28 books on games, including Scarney on Dice, Scarney's Guide to Modern Poker, and Scarney's New Complete Guide to Gambling. He served as a technical advisor in 1973 motion picture The Sting, and doubled for actor Paul Newman's hands during scenes that involved card manipulations and deck switching. Phil Wilmar, born in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. He was a magician, magic historian, lecturer, author, and editor. He was president of the International Brotherhood of Magicians between 2007 and 2008. Wilmar wrote numerous books and articles on the field of magic and his performances, including Fun with a Handkerchief, The Ring and Rope, The Knot Collector, and The Imposterous Princess Expanded. He also published other authors' works. Phil was the executive editor of The Linking Ring, the official publication of the International Brotherhood of Magicians from 1993 to 2007. This brings us to the International Brotherhood of Magicians, which the Youngstown Club is a participant. It's the world's largest organization of magicians with members in 88 countries. The International Brotherhood of Magicians, or IBM as we know it, had very humble beginnings. It all began when these two fellows, Len Ventus and Gene Gordon, became friends through an amateur magician correspondence club organized by Theodore Bromsky. Ventus was a magician and ventriloquist from Winnipeg, Canada. Gordon, an avid magic enthusiast hailed from Lyons, New York. They both received the magazine that Bromsky began publishing for members of his organization in 1919. After 10 issues, however, the Amateur Magicians Correspondence Club review ceased. After the demise of the AMCC, another organization known as the Society of American Amateur Magicians, Ventus and Gordon, because of their common interest of love for the art of magic, decided to start their own correspondence club in May 1922. Since they lived in different countries, Ventus suggested calling it the International Brotherhood of Magicians. And this is the emblem that they designed. The background of this emblem represents the world. The figure is Mercury, the messenger of the ancient gods and a magician. He carries a wand in his left hand. At the bottom, the letters IBM are joined to indicate unity and cooperation. The oak leaf denotes strength, while the two acorns represent the eastern and western hemispheres. The hands are clasped to signify the fellowship and brotherhood of magic throughout the universe. Ventus recruited fellow ventriloquist Ernest Schledge, later known as Don Rogers, from Hartford, Connecticut, who became IBM number 3. By the fall of 1922, they had 20 members, and the founders, while still teenagers, decided to publish a magazine. Gordon suggested calling it the Linking Ring, hoping that it would evolve as an organ that would unite all the associated magic clubs. The name of this publication later gave birth to the title of Rings, designating local groups of IBM members. Len Ventus took the presidency and became IBM number 1. Gene Gordon was publicity director with IBM membership number 2, and Don Rogers became editor of the Linking Ring, the Brotherhood's official journal. At the time, however, organizing local groups was not under consideration. This was to be a correspondence society, with members linked through a magazine. Don Rogers and Gene Gordon would serve as co-editors. Ventus would handle production. In an early issue of the Linking Ring, Ventus writes this: "I have given the matter of locals much discussion, both in correspondence with the members during my recent tour, and I feel that it is not to our best interest to encourage locals. If the IBM members in any town or city wish to have a local and there is not already another society in the city, we would then suggest that they form a local club and make it exclusive to IBM members, but run it independently. It would not influence the IBM or its members as a whole, but would be purely a local society. I would like to hear from some of the members giving me their views on this subject." And then you'll hear about how the Youngstown Magic Club was organized. By the fall of 1922, ink was drying on the first issue of the Linking Ring. The front page consisted of a masthead listing benefits and aims of the organization, fraternity, publicity, and mystery, and an unsigned editorial by Ventus. The Linking Ring would not become a monthly just yet, but would be published now and then. Page 2 consisted of an article about Ventus by Gene Gordon. The third page listed the names, address, and birthdays of all 20 members. And on page 4, as in any good publication, was a list of advertisers and products for sale. From 1922 through January 1925, 18 mimeograph issues of the Linking Ring were published. Then, in May of 1925, it graduated into a printed magazine, professionally typeset and beautifully produced. Membership grew rapidly. There was a clamoring for the formation of more local groups or rings. Gene Gordon established the first ring in Rochester, New York. Additional rings sprang up as members sought to meet and exchange ideas and interest in magic. This is when the Youngstown Magic Club became a ring of the IBM. The objectives of the IBM were simple: to organize individuals interested in the practice and promotion of the art of magic, to facilitate the exchange of magical ideas, and to promote harmony among those interested in magic. It was in 1926 the IBM took giant steps to expand from a simple correspondence organization. And on June 9th and 10th of that year, the first annual convention of the IBM convened in Kenton, Ohio. It was attended by the largest gathering of magicians ever brought together at one time. The numbering of the neighborhood of 150, and being represented as almost every state in the Union and every province in Canada. At that convention, they elected the first fully elected president was the legendary W.W. Durbin, who won the election during the IBM convention that was held actually in his own backyard. And the picture was in his own backyard, where he had built a theater that would hold 150 magicians. There's the inside of the theater. He was an avid collector of magic memorabilia, and at his home in Kenton, Durbin created a tiny Egyptian hall theater where he launched this first magic convention. During that same convention, and we do have a picture from that convention, it'll be 100 years old next year, and a lot of the early Youngstown Magic Club members can be seen in that if you know any of their names. During that same convention, the International Brotherhood of Magicians was incorporated, and constitution and bylaws were created. And this little article is from the Lincoln Ring for August of that year, and it talks about the organization of the Youngstown Club and their election of officers, which Fritz will be telling you about. Since that time, regular IBM elections are held each year, and a business meeting is called to report on the state of the organization. The offices of the IBM were headquartered in Bluffton, Ohio until 1998, when they were moved to St. Charles, Missouri. Okay, now that we've set the background concerning the Youngstown Magic Club, we're going to delve deeper into its 100-year existence.
Tech support, tech support. We've just heard from Gary about the general history of magic, more or less, in the northeastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania area. Now we're going to drill down, focus on Youngstown Magic Club, which of course is based in Youngstown. Gary already alluded that there was already a considerable number of magicians and interested in magic and sleight of hand in this area. And he did finally organize as the Youngstown Magic Club, and later became part of the IBM as Ring Number 2. There is some debate between us and the guys in St. Louis as to who's 1 and who's 2. We lost. The first president of the Youngstown Magic Club was a fellow by the name of Gus Dobright. He also happened to be a very well-known industrialist. He was the founder of what was then known as Falcon Bronze, later on became known as Falcon Foundry. He was also involved in several other corporate enterprises. And as a matter of fact, because he was the first president, he was one of the leaders of the magic community, our Ring 2 was eventually named for him. We were then known as the Gus Dobright Ring. The next prominent person who was part of the Youngstown magic scene was Charles Leedy. Charles Leedy was well known. He was a humor columnist for the Youngstown Telegram and later for the Youngstown Vindicator. That column was written for 34 years. I don't know of anybody else in the newspaper business who wrote for 34 years. He managed to entertain folks quite a bit. He had a lot of different skills. He was, in addition to being a humorist, he was an actor, a public speaker, a juggler, a baton and rifle twirler, and a tap dancer. Talk about multi-talents. Leedy was well known and was well sought after in all those capacities as an entertainer in the Youngstown and national scene. He was quite prominent in the formation and conduct of our club, and this thing over here, which looks like the Stanley Cup, is actually the Charles Leedy Trophy, which we award annually to the outstanding magician in Ring 2. It's voted upon. It's a complicated point system. I won't go into it now because we'll be here till next week trying to explain it. As I said, the club trophy was named for Charles. It was the Charles Leedy Trophy. It was first awarded in 1947 to a fellow by the name of Del Rey. So you may have heard of him. We'll get into him later. You see Charlie Leedy. There was a notice that was published. He was also doing a radio show from Cleveland and sort of ran an ad as to how to get a hold of the Youngstown Telegram. On the opposite side of this picture is the cover of the Lincoln Ring. He was the first one of our members to make it to the cover of the Lincoln Ring magazine, which is the official journal of the International Brotherhood of Magicians. Another prominent member was a fellow by the name of Thomas Loren G. He performed simply as Loren G. He was our first vice president. He developed, originally he was just a regular sleight of hand magic person. He got an interest in mentalism and what they then called spookery. Things involving ghosts and things that go bump in the night. He moved to Cleveland in 1941. At that time, he became president of Ring 23 in Cleveland. Later on in life, he moved to Fort Worth and Oklahoma City and got active in those two rings and became a leader in magic. He was basically, if we got anybody like an apostle, it had to be Thomas G. Our first treasurer was a fellow by the name of Thomas Knox. He was also Youngstown's first building inspector, as you can see, during the 1905-1916 period. He was a bookkeeper for the Youngstown Telegram and the E.M. and Gilman Company, which was the most prominent department store in town. This is before Strauss Hirschberg and McKelvey's got going. He also became vice president and loan officer of Home Savings and Loan until his retirement, and was quite prominent in the business community. And because a lot of these, as you see, some of these people, they were not professional magicians, they were businessmen who had an interest in magic and sleight of hand, and they were our first leaders. Fred LaBelle, 1984, 63, born in Chicago, moved to Youngstown in 1960. He had a fantastic business career. He was on the first campaign to develop a water reservoir, which eventually became the Andrew Reservoir, and he was appointed as the director of what was the former of the Mahoning Valley Sanitary District, as its secretary-treasurer until 1934. He was also the secretary of the Youngstown Chamber of Commerce. He was involved in the Boy Scouts, the Masons, the Rotary. Pretty fantastic and stellar career. But as Paul Harvey used to say, and now the rest of the story. In 1934, Fred LaBelle was indicted for embezzlement and convicted. So, but up till that time, Fred had an act as a Chinese magician. Took the stage name of On Too Long. He had a sense of humor. And the description where we had a beautiful set of Chinese robes that would do magic as a Chinaman, became quite popular. Instead of On Too Long, and given his eventual history, he should have named himself In Too Deep. He was pardoned by the governor, by the way, 8 months later. We've lost track of him, but we do know that he died in an automobile accident in Utah in 1963. Vernon Lux. Vernon Lux was born in Illinois, moved to Miles in the mid-1920s, worked in the composing room in the Miles Daily Times. Charlie Reedy, who was much noticed, there were a lot of people involved in newspapers and involved in magic. He joined Ring 2 as a charter member, moved back to Illinois a few years later to run his family-owned newspaper, but at that time he founded the International Society of Junior Magicians. What is that, you may ask? At that point, there were age restrictions on who could join the IBM and our competitor organization, the SAM, Society of American Magicians. If you were too young, I believe, the joining age at that point, you had to be 18 to belong to either of them. There were a lot of young teenagers that were getting interested in magic. Lux saw an opening for this. He wrote for folks of that age and founded the International Society of Junior Magicians to reach and allow these folks to organize. And at its peak, the International Society of Junior Magicians had a membership of over 5,000. These folks, of course, eventually they grew up and still are involved in magic, became part of the IBM or SAM. He was somewhat of an illusionist. He performed what he called the Woman of 1,000 Lives. As you can see at this point, his assistant is being impaled with all sorts of swords and other objects that came through unscathed. John McGurk. McGurk was born at Miles, graduated from Miles McKinley, and worked as a touring circus and carnival magician. He was a stage manager for the famous Harry Blackstone Sr., and was an assistant to Howard Thurston, who we've already heard here talk about. During World War II, he entertained the troops, returned to Miles, and worked at the GE Lamp plant. McGurk was famous for doing the big illusions. Everybody floated a lady back in those days. There's McGurk performing a levitation on a young lady during one his acts. John Ellison, 1897 to 1983. This is the first of the historical characters and charter members of the Ring that I actually knew personally. Probably because I got interested in magic early and John lived so long. Emigrated from Czechoslovakia in 1913, joined Howard Thurston's show as a mechanic in 1928, also worked for Harry Blackstone after that, and then after working, retiring, touring with his magicians, worked as an electrician for Youngstown Sheet and Tube for the next 30 years. He continued to manufacture magical apparatus. We would often see the product of his creative activities in our monthly meetings. Sometimes the tolerances for the prop were not done close enough, and we used to refer to some of this stuff as these sticky box tricks because they stopped. I was amused by the idea that he had to try to get a job with a magician. It says, at Liberty, assistant, 30 years old, 5 foot, 10 inches high, weight 138, sober, trustworthy, metal and wood mechanic and electrician. Willing and not afraid to work. When are you going to see somebody running out like that trying to get a job? But that's how he ended up with Thurston as well as Thurston's Mechanics. Frank Zaccone. Frank was a charter member of Room 2. You probably have not heard of him, but you've seen what he started. Zaccone is credited with inventing making balloon animals. Every clown, every Shriner, every juggler makes balloon animals. They have Frank Zaccone to thank for all that. There's a picture of him, the picture of his portrait is not too clear, but there's a newspaper clipping that shows him with a whole stage full of balloon animals that he created. Claude Bott, here's another one of our founding members, actually a charter member that I got to know personally again because he lived so darn long. Claude Bott was an inspector for Underwriters Laboratory and had a show which he did for schools, civic groups, and also sponsored by his employer. He was known as the Safety First Magician. Well, we got somebody who works for UL Labs and certainly be involved in that stuff. He was one of the first life members of Room 2. He did a film about fire protection in the 50s, and he was also involved in civil defense training. So, Bob was, I got to know Claude later on in his life, and he was basically at magic conventions no longer in the Youngstown area. Everett Duncan, here's another old timer that I got to know simply because he lived so long. He was a comedy magician. Up to that point, comedy magic wasn't a thing. The things that you see Penn and Teller do, magic was serious business. You didn't make jokes about it. He performed for troops in the Pacific Theater of World War II and turned professional after the war. He moved to Hilliard, Ohio, where he lived for the rest of his life. Everett was actually, just had a tremendous comic sense. His act was based on him appearing to fumble and bumble about the stage, picking up stuff that would break, stumbling over things. It was all scripted. He had great comic sense. There he is with Abner the Magic Chicken, which is part of his act. I got to know Everett Duncan quite fairly well by my visits to Columbus, where I did the magic convention here. That's where I got to know Everett Duncan. He also, if you take a look at the picture, you get an idea this guy is not being a serious magician. He's got a turban on, a flutophone, and a snake coming out of a basket with a selected card. That was one of his featured effects. George H. Tutters, known to us as Harry, another local magicians who stayed in the area and I got to know quite well. He was still very much active in the magic scene when I started getting involved as a 16-year-old. He was a certified public accountant in his own firm. He started out as a regular, as we call a regular magician, did sleight of hand and that type of thing, but then he got involved in mentalism, mind reading type of magic, and that's what he specialized in. I loved Harry dearly, but doing mentalism, to be honest with you, he was as dry as toast. Sometimes it was hard to follow him. He was very dedicated to it. He wrote the first history of the club. This is sort of the groundwork of the history of the club. This is in 1977. I was fresh out of law school at about that point, and being an accountant, he approached me, why don't we incorporate the ring as a non-profit 501c3 corporation, which we did. So we are a 503. It's all the money that we raise is non-taxable to us because we're doing performing magic. And also, as a corporation, it does give our individual members a little bit of protection should there be any liability for something going wrong during the show. Fortunately, that has never happened. Because Harry was such a prominent one of our original members, when he passed in 1988, we added his name to the name of our ring, so we were then known as the Tutter Doe-Right ring. And in 1932, when Harry was a member, we had our first banquet in February at the YMCA. We know that because Harry's in the picture. By that time, we'd become an active member of the club. Now we're moving into what I call our success stories. There are folks that actually turned pro and made a great reputation and substantial living. The first is a fellow named Raymond Petrosky, who performed under the name of Del Rey. Del, as we came to call him, grew up in an orphanage in Warren. His mother basically had too many kids, and she gave him up to the orphanage, and there he lived and went to school until he was 15 years old. While he was there, he saw a magic show put on by two of our members, Devin Beaufort and Dawn Lee. The magic bug had bit him bad. He got a magic set, he read everything he could, he practiced magic, and became a part of our club. Joined the Navy, and after his teaching in the Navy, became an assistant at Blackstone. Turned professional with a nightclub act. Del was not only a very accomplished sleight of hand magician, but he also was a whiz at electronics. Long before we had Apples and all that type of thing. He used electronics to create some of the illusions in his act. Some of you may have had the pleasure of seeing Del Rey do his thing before he passed in 2003. I know he came back to Youngstown on numerous occasions and was presenting shows at the Country Club and for several organizations. He's appeared on Ed Sullivan. He became a life member of Ring 2, said of that prominent. He was probably the first really well-known professional magician to come out of Ring 2. But somebody surpassed him. Johnny Ace Palmer. Johnny grew up and lived in Warren and went to Kent State. Got an associate degree in psychology and theater. Talk about a guy who knew what he needed to do. He needed to know about psychology, he needed to know about theater. That's what he majored in. He is the first close-up magician to win the Grand Prix, which is the biggest prize in magic, at the FISM. I'm going to butcher the French term, but it's the Fédération Internationale Société de Magie. It's the actual international group of magic clubs. He won the Grand Prix, the first close-up magician to do that, and rightfully had the title of World Champion of Magic. There was nobody better than John. But that shouldn't surprise people because prior to doing that, he won the top prize in the IBM, the Gold Cup in 1983, followed that with the Society of American Magicians Gold Medal in 1986, so naturally winning the Grand Prix in 1988 was the capstone to his competitive career. He's performed several times for the Magic Castle. As a matter of fact, Johnny now lives out in Southern California, works as a professional magician, worked for Disneyland, worked for several corporate clients. He was the Lecturer of the Year, the Close-Up Magician of the Year. If there was an award in magic, Johnny's got it. So, still a good friend. I can remember as a young magician going to one of the conventions where Johnny didn't have a hotel room. He crashed on the couch in my room. I remember a couple of times we brought home some of the stuff because he couldn't get it on the bus with us. So, Johnny became a good friend and a great magician. William F. Tackett. professional comedian. He was a burlesque comic, but he was also interested in magic. He performed under the name Buddy O'Day, and as you can see, he managed the Park Theater, which some of you may know something about, which is a local burlesque house, but he was also quite talented as a magician. He was a prolific author, publishing articles on performing magic and showmanship. And he was with us for quite some time, and he was elected a life member of Ring 2. Moving on to a little bit more recent, Jason and Stacy Greenmeyer, who perform as the Allens, a professional husband and wife. It's a mix of magic and mentalism. He does the magic, she does the mentalism. As you can see, Jason was born and raised in Salem, was a YSU grad, joined our Ring in 2006. Stacy earned a master's in counseling from Akron, so she's quite prepared to be very convincing in mentalism. They have to their credit 2 appearances on Penn and Teller. They tour all over the United States. When they're not touring, they do a monthly show in Cleveland at the Metropolitan at the 9 nightclub. It's usually about the first or second Friday of the month that they perform their act known as In Cahoots. We proudly claim Jason and Stacy as one of our success stories. Tom Craven. Now we're getting into the success stories and people who I regard as one of my mentors in this craft. Tom resided in Canada, Ohio, joined Ring 2 in 1964. Now, that's only 2 years before I joined. But Tom just is a prolific writer, teacher, and performer. He was an expert close-up magician. What is there to say about Tom? He was not only a professional magician as we know him. He was, for the longest period of time, he was the bailiff of the Kent Municipal Court. He moved to Florida for a period of time and opened a magic shop down there, VIP Magic. And even when he moved back to this neck of the woods, he continued the VIP Magic brand and invented and sold various magic tricks. He was a columnist for our journal, The Living Ring, on close-up magic. He wrote a monthly column for 21 years. Never missed a month. If you were in close-up magic, if you were in magic generally, you knew who Tom Craven was. He belonged to both the Youngstown Club and the Act Magic Club. Each one of the clubs has our Magician of the Year award. Combined, he won that award 15 years. That's unheard of. You couldn't compete with Tom. His name was on that trophy, I think, more than anybody else's. He has performed at the Magic Castle in Hollywood, California, 13 times. Tom was, to some degree, a professional success, but he's just an all-around great guy who would teach you magic with the drop of a hat. If you ask Tom to do a card trick and hand him a deck of cards, he was still going strong 2 hours later. He just had a phenomenal memory for the card tricks. Another one of my mentors and sort of the backbone, the real ramrod of our club through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s was Bob Phillips. Bob worked as the claims manager for Trustcom, joined our ring in 1946 after he got out of the service. He was known for comedy magic. He was also known for his work as a master of ceremonies, not only for our magic shows, but for a variety of organizations who have programs. Bob was in high demand. He was a 70-year member of the IBM. He held every office in our club. He was well known within the IBM community, often serving as a judge for some of our competitions at the national and state conventions. When he passed, we renamed the ring. Now it is now known as the Phillips Tutter Dough Right Ring. If anybody else dies, we're going to have to become a law firm. Nick Yon. Most of you have probably seen Nick Yon if you've ever been to some of the old Esther Hamilton area Santa Claus shows. Nick was usually booked to do his magic and balloon act. There you see a much younger man. He was employed as a go-right for Youngstown Sheep 2, joined the IBM in 1946, and and was very active in both the regional and national magic organizations, often working as the registrar for our IBM convention every summer. As I said, he was known for doing magic and balloons. He was also a life member of Ring 2 and was an Order of Merlin member of the IBM. Daniel McDonald, or the great Daniel, as he was known. Later on in his career, he just changed that to the Gray Daniel. Greenville, Pennsylvania, was a dentist up there. What you don't know is he was a paratrooper during World War II in the Pacific Theater, had over 20 citations and medals to his credit. Used the GI Bill to go to dental school because that was the safer way to live. He's a member of Order of Excelsior, meaning that he was a member for over 60 years. He was one of the most prolific and talented close-up and stage sleight of hand artists that we have ever witnessed. And he always did it with a little chuckle. His laugh was infectious. I remember he would, every once in a while when he would be doing the trick and some prophet slipped out his hand, he would do, first drop I've had today. But the performance was great, Daniel. He was often accompanied on the piano by his wife, Dorothy, who is still around. She is a nursing home in Greenville. Dan is missed by all of us. Just a great guy. Charles J. Smith, again, another mentor of mine, lived in Gerard, never really worked as a professional magician, although he was trained as a professional magician. After he got out of World War II, he was in Patton's Tank Corps, by the way. He used the GI Bill to attend something called the Chavez College of Magic out in California. One other member of ours who we're going to talk about today was a fellow by Art Kurzman, who also went to Chavez and got classically trained in sleight of hand magic. As you can see, Chuck was always impeccably dressed when he performed white ties. What was his name? Carlo the Continental Conjurer. He was a longtime editor of our local newsletter, The Foulard, and he was a life member of Ring 2 of the Order of Merlin Shield. Again, Chuck did a lot with a little. He didn't make a whole lot of money, so he couldn't spend a whole lot of money on fancy props. So he really excelled at sleight of hand. He would do tricks with rolled up paper napkins, coins, cards. It was pure sleight of hand, no tricky, sticky box of magic for him. Close out with a couple of our other prominent members of prominent fields. Dr. Jack Schreiber, some of you may know as a local physician. Jack was also involved in magic and used magic to do illustrative talks about patriotism and national history. There you can see a picture of him holding up an American flag. He's not just finished over. For his work, he received 6 Freedom Foundation awards. The other picture is Dr. Bill Crago, local veterinarian who got involved with us a little bit later in his life. He was a good friend of Bob Probst. Bob got involved in the club. And Bill just loved to tinker with stuff. He loved to play with the mechanical side of magic. Unfortunately, neither of those guys are with us anymore. So we still have a very active ring. We invite you to join us. If you have an interest in magic, or you have a child who's interested, if you have a grandchild who's interested, if you meet somebody on the street that's interested in magic, come join us. We meet the second Friday of each month at Valley Christian Church out in Oregon. Or you can get a hold of you and Gary, or we have our contact information up on the street, and we'd be glad to welcome you into the fold. We get together, we meet, we have our little magic competition, we teach each other. We occasionally put on shows as a club to raise money for ourselves and others. Our last effort was down at the Columbia Theater on Memorial Day, and they were thrilled to have us there. We're looking forward to working with them again. We've also done fundraisers for local charitable organizations. And we're just looking for outlets to do it. So, having done all that, I just accomplished my first trip, was getting this thing done before 1 o'clock.
Thank you, Fritz and Gary, for that magical presentation. Hopefully you'll stick around for a few minutes if anyone has any questions. Don't forget, next month we'll have Taylor Velasca from the Sharon Historical Society, and he'll be talking about the Shenango Valley Civil War story and its ties to the Mahoning Valley. And then we also have on your tables a screening of Ken Burns' new documentary, Memories of Christmas Past, opens on November 15. And then in our community gallery downstairs, we have a new exhibit. This is Youngstown, the Hispanic People of the City, by local photographer and artist Tony Nicholas. It's really nice. It's worth a trip to see it. So thank you all for coming. If you have any questions, stick around for a few minutes, and our magicians will answer them for you.
As Gary said before, we'll answer any questions except how did you do it?